Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We are so glad you're here with us today.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We've got a really fantastic visual piece to dig into today.
We really do. And, usually when we think about a map of a country, there is this implicit expectation of unity,
Well,
right?
oh, totally. It's a geometry of comfort, really.
Exactly. Like you look at a globe and you see the solid outline of a nation. The borders are drawn with this neat, continuous black line. And the cartographer is essentially pointing and saying, there it is. That is the whole.
Right, it projects stability. A unified map implies a unified, cohesive reality on the ground.
Yeah.
It suggests that whatever happens inside those borders, well, it happens within a singular, contained entity.
But then you step into the world of deep structural political analysis, and suddenly that neat, continuous black line is just completely shattered.
Oh, absolutely obliterated.
Right. So today, our mission is to decode a single, incredibly loaded piece of visual storytelling. We are unpacking the promotional cover art for an audio summary of Vincent Wright's book, The Government and Politics of France.
It's a classic.
It is. And just looking at this graphic, we are immediately presented with a cartographic landscape that is, well, it's the absolute definition of a tectonic fault line, just waiting to snap.
Right.
Okay, let's unpack this, because even though we just have the cover art and the promotional packaging here...
Which is an incredibly bold choice, by the way, for a foundational academic text.
Wait, you think so?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, book covers for serious political analyses, especially one that has reached a third edition, like Wright's, they are rarely accidental.
Right, they have a whole design team on it.
Exactly. Every pixel, every shadow, and, every spatial relationship on that cover is a deliberate piece of communication. It's designed to prepare your mind for the arguments inside.
So we are essentially going to read the map before we read the territory.
I like that.
Yeah. Because, the central image here isn't just a flat, two-dimensional drawing of France. It's a stylized, heavily rendered 3D block map.
It's got some real weight to it.
It really does. It looks like a massive chunk of Earth that has been physically excised from the planet and just left suspended in a void.
You're floating there.
But more importantly, it is not whole. It looks like it has just been subjected to, a magnitude 9 earthquake.
It's completely ruptured.
Right. The country is cracked wide open right down the exact center, separating into two incredibly distinct, jagged land masses. So I guess my question is, why depict a whole country as structurally split in half rather than just using a standard, political map?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the designer is bypassing the surface level politics entirely. They're taking you straight down to the geology of the nation.
The geology, right.
Yeah, by making the map a thick three-dimensional chunk of land rather than just a flat piece of paper, the visual implication is one of profound depth.
Oh, I see.
I mean, this isn't a superficial crack in the pavement. This division goes all the way down to the bedrock.
And the color coding makes that bedrock division just impossible to ignore.
It's so stark.
It really is. The entire left landmass, from the surface grass down through the roots and into the deep rock, is a solid, unyielding blue.
Right.
And the entire right landmass, mirroring it perfectly, is a vibrant, uncompromising red.
Yeah.
There's no purple in the middle. There is no gentle gradient where the two sides blend into some kind of moderate compromise. It's just a hard stop.
Precisely. And, this is a crucial detail for anyone trying to understand the source material.
How so?
Well, this visual choice communicates a deeply ingrained, almost structural polarization. It signals to you, the listener, that Vincent Wright's analysis likely frames French politics not just as a series of mild, everyday disagreements over, say, tax rates or zoning laws.
Right, the normal stuff.
Right, but rather as a fundamental ideological chasm that splits the very foundation of the state. It portrays a nation defined not by what holds it together, but actually by what splits it apart.
Now, I do want to jump in here really quick just to make a note for you listening. The designer here is using standard red and blue political shorthand, right? Which generally represents opposing political forces on the left and the right of the spectrum.
Standard visual language, yeah.
Exactly. So we are purely decoding the artist's structural metaphor here. We're analyzing the mechanics of this deep, unyielding division. We aren't casting a vote for the blue cliff or the red cliff.
Right, we're completely impartial here. We're just looking at how this state is depicted.
Exactly. And honestly, what is most fascinating to me is the permanence of those colors in the rock.
The permanence is exactly the point. The colors aren't painted on the surface like some temporary coat of paint that could just wash away in the next election cycle.
Right, it's not superficial.
No, the blue and the red are the geological composition of the Earth itself. It suggests that this partisanship is institutionalized. It is deeply historical.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, you cannot simply pave over a gap this wide. You have to somehow figure out how to build a society that straddles it.
Which brings us to the actual floor of that gap. Because if we zoom in from that macro tectonic split and look down into the jagged canyon between the blue and red landmasses,
Down into the trenches?
yeah, exactly, down into the trenches, we transition from the structural divide to the human element. Down in that deep crack, there are these tiny, stylized figures.
The citizens.
Right. On the left side, you have blue figures bracing themselves against the blue cliff face with their arms raised, pushing forcefully inward across the canyon.
Mhm.
And on the right side, mirroring them perfectly, you have red figures pushing back toward the left.
It's the human machinery operating inside the structural void.
Right, it is. But I mean, I have to push back a little on what this is actually saying about a functioning
All right,
society.
go for it.
Because looking at their posture, it looks incredibly aggressive. It's almost like two armies in a game of tug of war, but instead of pulling on a rope, they are just blindly shoving against each other in an empty space.
Yeah, it's intense.
So are we supposed to see government as just an endless, gridlocked brawl between citizens? I mean, if they are just pushing against each other forever, nothing is actually getting built. It just looks like exhausting institutional paralysis.
I get why you'd see it that way. It does look like paralysis if you only focus on the figures themselves.
Right.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, there's a brilliant piece of visual synthesis happening that fundamentally changes the meaning of that struggle.
Really? What am I missing?
Look closely at the negative space. The gap between the blue landmass on the left and the red landmass on the right isn't just empty, dark air. The background illuminating the canyon behind those pushing figures is a stark, bright white.
Oh, wow. I see where you're going. Blue landmass on the left,
Yeah.
stark white canyon in the middle, red landmass on the right.
Exactly. Together, they perfectly recreate the tricolor, the French national flag.
That is an incredible visual trick.
It is, but it's much more than a trick, really. It's the central thesis of the artwork.
How so?
Well, what the imagery is suggesting to you is a deeply fascinating paradox about statecraft. The very friction, the clash, the relentless, exhausting opposition of these blue and red figures pushing against each other across that white void.
Yeah.
That is what actually forms the identity of the French nation. The flag, the ultimate symbol of the unified state, literally does not exist in this image without the empty space in the middle.
That's wild.
And that space is entirely defined by the pushing from both extremes. The government is literally built on the tension of these opposing human forces.
Wait, so by framing this as like a dynamic equilibrium in a political sense, is this graphic telling the listener that gridlock isn't a bug in the French system, but the actual load-bearing feature?
That's a great way to put it, yes.
But, I mean, does that risk romanticizing what is actually just bitter political dysfunction? Is the designer sort of letting the government off the hook by calling this endless clash national identity?
You know, that is exactly the question Wright's text likely forces you to confront. Are we romanticizing dysfunction? Or are we just recognizing a harsh reality about how human beings organize power?
It's a tough line to walk.
It really is. In a deeply divided society, a dynamic equilibrium might be the only alternative to a complete collapse.
What do you mean by that?
Well, think of a vaulted archway in medieval architecture. The heavy stone blocks at the top stay in the air precisely because they are falling against each other.
Oh, right, the keystone.
Exactly. The tension is what creates the strength. If one side stops pushing, the entire roof caves in.
So the state isn't a static, peaceful entity. The state is the tension.
The state is the tension. Without the blue pushing right and the red pushing left, the structure loses its defining characteristic.
That is heavy.
Yet the institutions of the French government, as interpreted by this promotional packaging, they might be designed not to resolve the conflict, but to contain it.
To contain the explosion, basically.
Right, to weaponize that friction so that neither the blue side nor the red side can ever fully conquer the other.
That completely flips how you normally think about a functioning democracy.
You really are.
I mean, we usually imagine democracy as a bridge connecting two sides, but this graphic is saying, no, there is no bridge. The canyon itself is the destination. The pushing is the point.
The pushing is the point, yeah.
That is a heavy, almost cynical view of political science, elegantly summarized before you even open a single page.
And that brings us to the fascinating juxtaposition of how this heavy, ancient geological view of the state is actually being delivered to you.
Right.
Because if the French state is defined by this constant dynamic friction, How do you capture that active energy for a modern learner?
Yeah, here's where it gets really interesting. Because a static, dusty textbook might not do justice to a society that is constantly shifting like tectonic plates,
No, it wouldn't.
which explains the very modern pragmatic choices we see overlaid on top of this artwork. Down at the bottom of the image, we see the text telling us this is the third edition of Vincent Wright's book.
Right.
But up in the top left corner, deliberately demanding your attention away from the cracked earth, is a bold, modern red badge that says audio summary.
It really pops out at you.
It does. It features this crisp white headphone icon. And trailing behind that text, fading into the blue landmass, are these faint, glowing digital audio waveforms.
Yeah, the contrast there is intentionally jarring. You have the immense physical weight of a cracked planet on the right representing, centuries of historical statecraft.
Yeah.
And then you have the sleek, ephemeral, high-tech iconography of modern media consumption on the left.
It's ancient Earth versus digital air.
Exactly.
But I have to ask, and maybe I'm just being a purist here, does distilling a heavy, dense, third edition academic text into a quick audio summary fundamentally oversimplify the very concepts we just spent time analyzing?
That's a fair question.
I mean, we just extracted a massive amount of nuance from the visual metaphor of the tricolor flag and this whole tectonic load-bearing tension thing. When you slap an audio summary badge on a subject this complex, do you lose the gravity?
This raises an important question. It really does.
Can you really compress the sprawling history, the labyrinthine institutions, and the complex human dynamics of the French government in something you passively listen to while, waiting in line for coffee?
It is a totally valid concern, and I think it strikes at the heart of how we process complex information today.
Yeah.
Let's break down the two elements of that text. First, the phrase third edition. When an academic text on government requires 3 separate editions, it tells you that the subject matter is not a finished building.
It's a continuous construction site.
Right. Exactly. The laws change, the constitutions are amended, the cultural pressure points move, the foundational bedrock shifts.
So the first 2 editions were probably rendered obsolete by reality.
Precisely. It is a highly dynamic environment. Now, pair that shifting reality with the audio summary badge. The publisher is acknowledging the reality of today's information overload.
Which is very real for all of us.
Oh, absolutely. You, the listener, are dealing with a crushing cognitive load on a daily basis. You likely do not have 30 hours to dedicate to the granular minutiae of French electoral subcommittees.
I certainly don't.
Right. But you still need to understand the macro-level forces shaping a major global power.
So you need to know that the ground is cracked even if you don't have time to measure the exact depth of the canyon.
Exactly. The format is a concession to modern time constraints, sure. But the visual design argues that it isn't necessarily a compromise in quality.
Really? How so?
Look at how the designer integrated those faint glowing audio waveforms. They aren't just floating randomly in the corner. They are visually interacting with the 3D block of France.
Oh, wait.
They look almost like the readout from a seismograph.
Oh, wow. That is brilliant. A seismograph measuring the earthquake that split the map.
Yes. The medium becomes a natural extension of the metaphor. What does it mean to listen to a tectonic shift? An audio summary is uniquely suited to capture the active, tense energy we discussed earlier.
That makes so much sense.
You aren't just staring at static tables of voting data. You are absorbing the rhythm and the pulse of the political system. The goal of this summary format isn't to replace the deep, exhaustive text of the third edition.
Right.
It's designed for people like you, extracting the crucial aha moments, the underlying logic of that red and blue structural chasm, and making it digestible without losing the core weight of the arguments.
It's about finding the specific vein of gold within that massive, heavy block of earth and pulling it out intact.
Beautifully put.
The waveforms tell you that the analysis is alive. It's active. Which I think brings us back to what this all means for you, the person trying to stay informed without drowning in data.
Yeah, what's the big takeaway here?
It proves that we have to be incredibly analytical about the packaging of the information we consume. Every single piece of media you interact with, down to a seemingly simple promotional thumbnail on a screen, is trying to build a framework in your mind before you even engage with the content.
It is preloading the context.
Exactly. If you just hit play on a summary of French politics without this visual framing, you might assume you are about to hear a dry recitation of parliamentary procedures.
Which sounds awful.
It really does. But because you've decoded the mat, you know exactly what kind of turbulent journey you are in for. You see a nation defined not by a neat, continuous border, but by a deep structural divide that cuts through the bedrock.
Yeah.
You see the human element trapped in that canyon, demonstrating that the relentless friction of opposing forces might actually be the mechanism that creates the national identity itself.
Tricolor.
Right. And you see how that heavy, shifting academic reality is translated into the digital pulse of an audio waveform, proving that you can absorb the profound weight of a shifting state without being crushed by it.
The packaging itself is a translation of the text. It's brilliant.
It really is. So as we wrap up this deep dive, where does that leave us?
As we consider this visual synthesis of a deeply polarized state held together by its own internal friction, I think it leaves you with a critical question regarding the structural integrity of this system.
Okay, lay it on us.
If the cover art implies that the national identity of France, that beautiful tricolor flag, is only completed by the empty, tense chasm where opposing sides clash,
Hmm.
consider the actual physics of that tectonic metaphor.
All right.
If a functioning government actually requires deep, fundamental polarization to sustain its national identity, is that truly a stable structure?
Oh, wow.
Or is that visual of two sides pushing endlessly against each other over a void not a portrait of dynamic equilibrium, but rather just a symptom of a massive fault line, waiting for the exact moment when one side finally pushes too hard and the entire system simply collapses entirely?